Hi everyone, and welcome to Spotlight on 3D Denim Creation Video. In this video, we'll be exploring the different methods and best practices to use when it comes to creating and adding washes to denim garments. When we create a denim garment, it's important for us to use material images that are high quality. A high-quality base fabric with a clear diffuse map and detailed normal map can help to enhance the look of our washes. There are a few ways we can add washes to a garment. Washes in V-stitcher are usually applied as artwork on the garments. Each method has its own advantages, and we'll discuss them in this video. In the first method, we utilize multiple artworks stacked on top of one another. There are the light wash effects and the darker washes that we can add to achieve the different highs and lows of the washes. If you take a look at this completed garment, you can see all the bounding boxes in the 2D window of the different layers of wash added to the garment. Different parts of the garment will also have irregular wash effects and pooling. For example, the fly or the waistband. Thus, these areas will also utilize a different artwork or artworks to create the effect. These images are also created and stacked as separate images. We can easily utilize options like material blending, transparency, and color to achieve the best results. For material blending, overlay usually makes the fabric lighter, and multiply usually darkens the fabric color. Transparency allows us to adjust the intensity of the washes. We can also utilize the Use Lower Layer Maps option to have a more blended and realistic effect for washes. This allows the artwork to utilize the same normal map that is used for the fabric. This is why having a detailed normal map is important. Since we are adding many artworks, the 2D window can start to look cluttered, and we can easily move things around by accident. So here are some tips to improve your experience. Firstly, add all the bigger washes first, and only on one side of the garment. In this case, we are adding to one side of the pants legs first. We adjust the material blending, transparency, and position. Here's a tip. Add a warm tone overlay over all of the prints to create a more realistic denim wash effect. We can repeat the same steps on the back leg pattern. Once that is done, we utilize the Group option. We disable pieces in the horizontal contextual menu and multi-select the washes on each leg. Then we right-click and select Group. Remember that we can also see the group in the context view where it can be renamed for ease of reference. Group can allow us to easily identify the different parts of the washes on the garment, and grouping the washes makes a more organized workspace. We can also easily see all the elements within a group on the 2D Resources tab. And we can adjust the layer order in the Resource tab or in the Context view. Once we have completed one side of the garment, we utilize the Magic Mirror option if the patterns are symmetrical. In this case, the back patterns are symmetrical, so we will use the Magic Mirror Shape plus Material option. This clones the entire group at once, and the artworks that are mirrored will also be grouped, saving us time of having to reapply the washes on the other side and grouping them again. Remember that this clones the original artworks and mirrors them, so it is important to name them clearly. For patterns which are not symmetrical, we need to add the washes on the other side manually. First, we clone the washes and flip them in the image editor. To make it easier to identify the different washes on the Garment tab, we may rename the washes. For example, we name this R-Front Warm Tone, and so on. Once we complete the bigger washes on the garment, we utilize the Lock option. We right-click and lock the different groups. This is great if we do not want to accidentally move, scale, or rotate any of the already existing washes as we continue to stack. Remember that you can unlock by right-clicking and select Unlock, or by clicking the lock icon in the 2D tab. If the amount of bounding boxes gets overwhelming, or if we need to work only on the patterns, we can disable internal lines in the 2D window. This hides the bounding boxes and any internal lines from the 2D workspace, but we can still hover the cursor and select the artworks or groups. We can now stack the parts which have more irregular or unique wash effects, like washes on the fly, waistband, belt loops, and pockets. Note: we can use the same washes on different patterns if they have the same effect. We simply clone the artworks and then resize or crop to match the size of the pattern. Remember to rename the washes to easily identify them. The next method utilizes the all-over print function. This is suitable for effects such as stonewash. This requires a seamless and tileable wash image, which is added as an artwork and converted to an all-over print. With this method, we have a much cleaner workspace as the artwork is within the pattern itself with no bounding box showing. Then we can add in all the extra unique washes on the garment, like the whiskers and irregular washes on the fly and pocket opening. Similarly, we can edit the material blending, transparency, color, and so on for the washes. For the last method, we utilize a Photoshop file, .ps file, where all the layers of washes have been added in Photoshop. This method creates a clean workspace in the 2D window. However, we need to edit any of the blending and intensity of the washes within Photoshop and would not be able to adjust the placement, material blending, and transparency of each individual part of the wash in VStitcher. We can create one PSD file for each pattern, adding in both the highs and lows of the washes in one artwork. Creating denim washes requires a variety of artworks and seam images. Since most of the washes required are different from one denim garment to another, it is best to create these washes yourself or have a Photoshop expert within your team to create these washes using image editing software like Photoshop. If you have many garments which utilize similar or same washes, it would be great to build up on your own custom preset library of commonly used washes in your team. This library can be used and shared throughout the organization when creating denim garments. Simply save all the U3MA files for each wash effect in one folder, and load the folder as a library in the Materials tab. When you have a new wash created, be sure to add the U3MA of the new material in the same folder, and reload the source file to get an updated version of the library. You can also start with the existing Browseware Denim library, which you can download. As you go on and start editing or creating your own wash effects, these can also be added into the existing library. For more information on material libraries and U3M, visit the Browser Help Center. In VStitcher, we also have available the Genealogia Dry Finish Gallery, which allows us to download and utilize these finish effects. However, do note that these are presets, so any custom wash effects must be created, added in separately, or edited from existing washes available. Great! So now we know how washes work and how to acquire them. Let's go through some of the common ways to create these washes. Firstly, we need to export a print to file so that we have a true to size shape of the pattern, which we can export with fabric texture. Let's bring in this exported pattern shape into Photoshop. Next, we pick out a suitable brush in Photoshop. We can utilize different brushes to achieve different effects. For example, we can use a soft brush to create a simple smooth wash effect, or scratchy brushes to create scratches on the denim garment. Photoshop brushes can be downloaded or purchased from many online sources or even created within Photoshop. Before we start adding the washes over the pattern shape, we must create a separate layer. This is important so that we can hide the fabric background before saving the file. When creating washes, it is best to have a reference image so you know where to add in the washes, highs, and lows. For example, we want to add a light wash to the thigh area on the jeans. We will use the selected brush, change the color to white, and ensure we work on the new layer we created. This may look very harsh. However, to check what it would look like, we can change the layer type to either multiply or overlay. This would have the same effect as what we would see in V-Stitcher with material blending. Once satisfied, we can change the layer back to normal, hide the fabric texture, and save the file as a .psd file. This file type is useful if we want to make any changes later on. Back in V-Stitcher, we add in the .psd file as an artwork. We drag it over the pattern. And we can then adjust the material blending, transparency, and color. Also, select the Use Lower Layer Maps option to create a nice blended wash. If there are any changes that need to be done to this wash, we go to the image editor and click Edit Externally. This opens the .psd in Photoshop, and we can make changes instantaneously. All we need to do after making changes is to save, and the V-Stitcher file is automatically updated. We can repeat this process for all the different washes we want to add. If we want to use the method of stacking the different washes in one Photoshop file instead of separate PDS files, we can continue to add in layers in the Photoshop file. Once again, this means that any changes to the different layers must be adjusted within Photoshop and not in V-Stitcher. The other method is using the all-over print. To create a seamless tile for an all-over print, we first need to use a brush to create an image of the effect, like this, in Photoshop. If you do not have suitable brushes, you can also create these images within other raster-based softwares, like Procreate, and add them into V-Stitcher. The key to creating a seamless tile is to ensure the four corners of an image match. So we duplicate the layers 3 times and drag each image onto the 4 corners of the canvas. It's important to have smart guides turned on so that the images match nicely when tiled. In the center of the image is where the variations will occur. We can add in another image or use the same image and edit it to create unevenness. For instance, we can use the eraser or clone stamp to create more irregularities in the artwork. Before saving, we ensure that the background is hidden, and then save the file as a .psd. We add a .psd file into V-Stitcher. Drag onto the garment and click Convert to All-Over Print in the context view. A fabric group has been created with the fabric and the artwork. Now we can adjust the material blending, transparency, and color of the wash. To adjust the size of the wash effect, we go to the image editor and adjust the size here by percentage or scale. Alternatively, we can use the texture tool to move, scale, and rotate the artwork. Similarly, we can edit externally to make further changes to the wash in Photoshop. Lastly, we will add wash effects on the edges. This utilizes a combination of stitch construction as well as images of puckering effects on the edges. Here you can see a grouped seam combining a repeat of the added washes, and in most cases, the top stitching, be it a single needle or a double needle. Similarly, these washes need to be created. Since the edge washes are very similar from one garment to another, you can also easily make use of the existing library or create your own preset library. The easiest way to create a repeat of the wash is to select the top stitching we would like to use first. Then duplicate the original top stitching and click on Edit externally in the image editor. In Photoshop, we are going to use the gaps on the stitches as a guide to where the shadows and highlights need to be. We create a new layer and then can brush a darker color in between the stitches. Once again, it is best to have a reference image so you know what you need to achieve. Once that's done, we hide the top stitch layer and save. We remember to rename the wash seam. Now we drag the wash to the group with the top stitching. We continue by creating the different highs and lows of the wash and group the different images together. For example, this seam has a simple straight wash effect, a highlight layer, and a shadow layer, as well as the top stitching. Remember that we can also adjust the material blending, transparency, and color of each layer in the group to achieve the desired results. For additional realism, we can change the stitch construction of the edge. These effects can be better seen in a ray trace rendering, so it is worth using V-Ray Preview window to check. Seams for denim can also be customized to create such seams with the Grouped Seams option. Adding wash effects to denim garments adds visual realism as well as providing an important vehicle for design iteration and visualization. I'd like to thank you all for joining today's session, and we're looking forward to seeing your denim creations. If you have any questions regarding denim creations or washes, feel free to reach out to us at support@browswear-global.com. For our next denim spotlight, we'll be walking you through denim destruction effects and showing you how to create all different effects such as adding holes, grinding, and fraying. So be sure to tune in.